Alright, Insight 111. Often with the introduction of sexuality, one's life is sidetracked dramatically. Bring back your true self and how you used to be. Okay? Realize and know that you are that very same person that existed before the introduction of the sexual influences. Okay? You're the same person. In this way, you are also able to cross over sexuality that sidetracks your life. Just see where your life is, what you have missed as far as being yourself. True happiness is in existing. True happiness is in existing. It is in being yourself. Being a slave is one of the worst conditions to be in. You might have been a slave to ideas, desires, guilt, expectations, shame, and finances for a long time. So here I'm encouraging you to be aware that you are that same person before the sexual manipulative misinformation came into your life and sidetracked you. Okay, it's like I'm giving you a boost, reminding you, hey, you are that same person. You are that same fantastic, joyous, wondrous life that you should run around, doing all kinds of things, having fun, painting and running and jumping and talking and whatever, you used to do. Some of you were shy. Okay, so I'm going to read about the explanation here underneath the insight. It is important to establish in your mind your self-identity. It is important to reconnect with that true part of yourself, which you once might have found to be true. For many people, that idea of self and true self was developed early in childhood. For some, they have found it later in life, and may have not found or identified it yet. Connect with that. Know that to be true. Establish that idea of yourself in your mind. Do not let a fake life distract you from yourself. In all conditions, even in finances, it is not good to be totally dependent on others. Be balanced financially as well. Take charge of your spending and start saving. Do not jeopardize your financial stability by wastefully giving money to others. Be independent. This does not mean being uncaring to others' needs. How can you properly take care of others when you yourself are imbalanced in any way? It is much like the instructions given to you on an airplane. When the oxygen masks fall down, the parents are to place the mask first on themselves before placing it on the child. This is done because the child cannot do it for you. The sooner you take care of yourself, the sooner you can get to your child and ensure properly that the mask is on correctly for him or her. However, if you try to put the mask on them, you might fail because you might be facing an abnormal air pressure and not be able to get the mask properly around their face. And when you try to help yourself, it might already be too late because you might not have enough strength left to place the oxygen mask around your own face. Take care of yourself. It is very important. When you take care of yourself and you are financially balanced, then others can lean on you financially as well. They can lean on you financially because of your very stability. If you were unstable financially and gave all of your money away, probably all your money away, you make yourself financially unstable and cannot help any other person financially with the efficacy that you could before because you are unstable now. This is true of emotions as well. When you balance yourself emotionally, then you can share all you want with others emotionally because you have achieved emotional balance. That is the point where I am at emotionally. The point being that achieving balance in yourself in all aspects of your life is valuing and cherishing yourself. You are also teaching by the best way, which is by example. Having achieved balance, you can share directly without putting yourself in a state of imbalance. Insight 112. Do not let anything stand in your way of being yourself. Not drugs, not alcohol, not cigarettes, not stress, not so-called friends, not pressures, not food, and certainly not sexuality used as a mind-manipulating device. You have a formidable task ahead of you to understand what sex is, since from the very beginning you have received manipulative and deceptive information. Insight 113. There is a different state of mind and a different state of being, which is more potent and pleasurable than sex, as it is presented by manipulators. In that state of mental awareness, one experiences all thoughts, actions, beings, and things as a live, alert, and aware being. Even the sexual act in that alive and aware state is much more wonderful. This potent pleasure comes from the state of awareness, of being, existing. I'll read the explanation here. A thing is made potent when it is concentrated. Again, anything is made more potent, more strong, when it is concentrated. This state, which I speak of, is concentrated awareness. As such, it yields a great more full experience in whatever thought or activity one chooses to endeavor in. Imagine you being conscious, very conscious of whatever you set your mind to. You will get to experience that much more greater. You will be and feel more alive. You have that ability. And you can go through life not being conscious, and your whole life will pass away like that, and you will be like a robot, and you will die not having experienced anything of life. You were just not aware. So, be aware. Insight 114. Now we're talking about this state. I'm going to explain it more clearly. I will state it more clearly. There is an alert, awakened state of mind, which is much, much more potent and pleasurable in a healthy way than sex, as manipulators present it. In that state of being, one observes, thinks, feels, and acts naturally without being coerced into action. In that state of mind, you are observing, thinking, and acting with truthful mental clarity. Now the thing here is, no one is pressuring you. You're being you. And you're aware. Insight 115. You, in that state of mind, are not following along. You are not seeing, thinking, interpreting, and acting. Again, you are not seeing, thinking, interpreting, and acting according to a predetermined way of being. In that state of mind, you do not simply believe to be true what others present to you as true. In other words, you're not programmed. You're being alive. And at any moment, you could do and be spontaneous and be whatever. You could do this, you could do that. Anything is possible. And this gives you pleasure, you see. Insight 116. In that state of mind, you do not follow a mood of passion. Rather, you are conscious of yourself and in control of yourself, and you move and act according to your free will. Free will. Yeah. In that state of mind, you can be performing any activity. In the performance of that activity, you will be distinctly aware of the fact that you are conscious, aware and able to make free choices. You will feel free, and this awareness of freedom will give you sweet, sweet pleasure. Insight 117 is the last one on chapter 5. This state of consciousness is very pleasurable and has no ill effect. If you should be performing a sexual act while in this conscious state, you will not simply be carried away by lust, You will be the one in control of your own faculties. You will be aware of whatever you want to be focused on in this wonderful interaction with another being. Faculties means, of your own self, of your own body, your own mind, your own emotion. You will be in charge of yourself. We're on chapter 6. Keys and solutions to liberate the mind. This is insight 118. Learn to guard your thoughts by the practice of limiting and controlling all your faculties, such as all the actions of your senses, body, emotions, and thoughts, etc. Exercise, because it teaches you to assert your willpower to control your mind and body. By exerting your willpower, practice controlling what your mind inputs and what your mind thinks of. So let's go over this a little bit. So we're teaching you to learn to guard your thoughts. So a guard watches and takes appropriate action to make sure the right kind of things get in and the wrong kind of things to be thrown out, to stay out, and not even allowed to get in the first place. So you're thinking of a thought, you need to guard, you need to be aware, be conscious of your own thoughts, right? By the practice of limiting and controlling, meaning you're the person in charge of all your faculties. What faculties are we talking about? We're talking about limiting and controlling. You're being in charge of all your actions. So when you do an action, be aware of the action. Be aware of the thought behind the action and also the action, right? Of your senses, of all your sensory senses, of your body, whatever action your body takes, whatever your body does, whatever your senses are involved in, be aware. So if you're sensing, you're aware that you're sensing. If your body is engaged in sitting, dancing, talking, whatever it is, be aware that you're doing these things. Whatever activity you get involved in, be aware. Your emotions, if you're feeling emotions, feel them, but also be aware that you're feeling emotions. You're aware of your thoughts. You're thinking a thought, you're aware of your thoughts. So practice this. Practicing being aware and being in control. Being in control, being in charge of your faculties, right? So we just said. So exercise, just as we said. Now exercise because it teaches you to assert your willpower. So when you do exercise, what are you doing? You're moving your body parts around, So by moving your body around, you are using your mind to control your body. So you're exercising your willpower. So even without noticing this, you nonetheless, that's what happens. So exercise. Be involved in any activity and do so. When you do so, you're exercising your willpower over your body, over your senses, right? So exercise because it teaches you to assert your willpower to control your mind and body. It also controls your mind because when you want to do a particular task, you have to keep your mind on the task to be able to do it correctly. So it's also controlling your mind to a degree. By exerting your willpower, so now when you do your exercise, when you do activities, do that activity, and you get stronger willpower, and your mind becomes more focused. And now that you know that you have the ability to use willpower, exert your willpower. Practice controlling what your mind inputs. What do you put into your mind? Practice controlling that. Practice being in charge of what gets inputted in your mind and what your mind thinks of and what do you think of. So what you think of, you want to practice, exert your willpower over your mind. This is just the beginning hints of what we're going to get into. We're going to get into specifics. Insight 119. Use any activity, such as washing dishes, exercising, etc. Like we said, anything. Walking, dancing, fixing your nails, fixing your hair, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, playing a game, whatever, any and all activities, right? Use any activity to practice assertiveness and concentration of mind. Learn to apply the assertiveness in order to control and guard your mind, senses, body, and actions. Again, learn to apply the assertiveness. However, performing an activity because of habit or compulsion is non-assertive, which encourages your mind, senses, body, and actions to remain undisciplined and easily influenced. Do everything in moderation in order for you to bypass any addictive tendencies. So you don't want to go doing an activity out of habit, such as when you walking, because it's such a thing that you've done for such a long time. You could do it, sleep. This is why some people sleepwalk. So you could quite walk a lot without being aware much, really, of the walking. So you need to be aware, be mindful, as they say. So doing any activity just out of compulsion, like people who are gambling, or doing something because they feel. See, that's what you need to do. You need to be aware of your feelings. When you're doing something, do you feel compulsed, like a compulsion or something pulling you that you have to do that? Yeah, you want to get away from that. Get involved in activities that you are going to exercise your willpower to do. You're going to do it assertively rather than habitually. And do things in moderation, whether habitually you do something or non-habitually. Either way, you want to get away from doing an activity too much or too little. Okay. This will help you get away from being addicted to any activity. Insight 120. Starting pointers on controlling your thoughts. Do not expose your senses to things you do not want your senses to be exposed to. Do not expose your imagination to anything you do not want your imagination to be exposed to. So let's say you want to stay away from fatty foods, or you want to stay away from sexual imagery, or want to stay away from apples. whatever you want. You want to associate with good people. You don't want to associate with bad people. So, or I shouldn't say bad people, but rather people who are behaving badly. Okay, so don't. Whatever you do not want to associate with, keep away from those things. So you got to be aware. Maybe some planning is involved. Think beforehand what you're going to do if you are exposed to something like that. What you're going to do? You're going to quickly go away. What are you going to do? You're going to plan your day not to not to be in close proximity to such things, the things you don't want to be exposed to. All right, so let me read a little bit of an explanation. So do not let anything that you do not want to see to be seen by your eyes. So you do not let anything that you do not want to hear to be heard by your ears. Do not let anything that you do not want to focus on to grab your attention. This includes your imagination and thoughts. Control of your imagination and thoughts might be difficult at first, especially since that is a major part of the problem. After you understand the various methods of manipulation, and you learn and practice how to break free from such manipulations, then you can apply not thinking and not imagining, which is Insight 68, about various scenarios much more effectively. You will be proficient to such a degree that you will completely halt them, which is insight 242, which is the last insight. Do not be at a place where you do not want to be. Do not meet people you do not want to meet. Do not hang out with people you do not want to hang out with. Do not expose yourself to anything you do not want to be exposed to. Do not laugh at jokes that are not funny, etc. These are elements of guarding your senses, thoughts, and yourself. Again, if you laugh at jokes you do not find funny, you are training your mind to surrender to expectations. This makes your mind more susceptible to surrender to sexual manipulative expectations. Stop doing things that you do not find true. It could be about jokes or any other area of life. Yeah, so you have to be assertive and live your life the way you want to live. If you simply go along with what other people are doing and saying and just play along with them, well, you're not training your mind. You know, you're not disciplining your mind. You're letting your mind just go along with whatever else is going on. And so when it comes to sexual information, when you're exposed to it, your mind is likely to go along with that as well, because you've trained your mind to do that. So you have to do the reverse. Be aware and think to yourself, okay, do I want this or do I not want this? If you don't want it, don't want it. Don't be around it. If a joke is not funny, don't laugh, because if you laugh, then you're going along with something which is untrue. You're going along with an outside circumstance imposing itself on you, and you're going along with it. That is the same thing as a sexual experience. Sexual experience comes shown or thought by imagination, and you go along with it. Why? Because your mind is trained that way. So you want to stop that and be conscious and aware and make decisions based on you, not based on outside circumstances. Insight 121. If you become aware that you are in the interim stage, means the middle stage, in the interim stage of exposure to unwanted information, then stop the exposure and return to your original state of peace of mind, control, and or involve yourself in truer activities. So, we're talking about, let's say you're doing something, and then in the middle of doing that you realize, it means you become aware that, I don't want to do this. Now your awareness is working. Before it wasn't. Now suddenly you're aware in the middle of the activity. Right then you go, okay, I don't want this, and you want to get away from that activity as soon as possible. You want to terminate it, minimize it, terminate it, get away from it, because you don't want to associate with that. So this is what this insight is telling you. So if you are unaware during the day, it happens a lot, and you fall into an activity, or you're associating with a person or a place, or a situation, whatever it is, and suddenly you become aware while you're in mid-exposure to this activity, person, or situation. You go, I don't want this. Good. Now you're aware. Now you want to cut and get away from that. That's what you do. And you return to your original state of mind, which is peace of mind. Peace of mind. Original state of peace of mind or control, or involve yourself in some other activity that is true to you rather than false. Something that you want to be involved in. Even the most simplest things. Sitting down somewhere and just being and thinking, whatever it is. I'll read a little bit about the explanation. You might have taken the bait and have started to pay attention to truly unwanted influences in your life, sexual or otherwise. Upon becoming aware of this fact, in the midst of the influence, you let it go, depart, and proceed into truer and more satisfying activities and ventures. Very good. Insight 122. Over the many years, you might have been programmed to think a certain way about sex. Therefore, your mind is used to it. Even if you are given new liberating information, you do not automatically start living your life in accordance to the new information. Very simple, right? So you've grown up thinking of sex in a certain way for such a long time, and you're just used to it, the programming. You're thinking of sex, and you think of it, it has so many elements to it, which you are used to. You're thinking that sex involves so many of these elements. And when the new liberating information, freeing information comes to you in the form of this knowledge in the book, right, you don't automatically start living according to it. It's just normal because you know that to be true. Well, you have known it for such a long time. Even if the new information comes, doesn't mean you're going to automatically just start living by it. I'll read more about the Insight 122. I'm going to read the explanation. The old information has been known by the mind for a very long time. The mind is used to that old information. When new information is introduced, the old information is still prominent in the mind. The mind has been established in the old way of thinking. The new thinking has been introduced, but the mind is not established in it. The mind is not familiar with it enough. Or the mind is not familiar enough with it. Either way, it works. 123. Make conscious efforts to live a conscious life and to get out of the habitual programmed way of living that is based on incorrect information. So you want to be conscious, aware, alive. You don't want to be a robot, right? You want to be alive. Live a real conscious life, real life. So, explanation. It is normal for the mind to revert back, meaning to go back, to its old way of thinking and behaving, since the mind has access to memories. Put into practice the new information. You gotta put into practice the new information you have. You gotta start practicing to live by it. Put into practice the new information, being conscious of its reality, more or less continuously throughout the day, being established in that consciousness, and soon you will have left the old consciousness behind. So you have some new information. Good. Now you want to be conscious and aware throughout the day to try to use that information, the newfound information, in your daily activities, your daily thoughts. However you can put it to input it. Practice using it, so eventually you got that new information, you become used to using it and living by it, seeing that as a reality, which it is reality, which is you have determined that already. Insight 124. Get out of the habit of thinking and feeling the way you have been accustomed to. Yeah. Even the last insight we talked about getting out of the habitual programmed way of living. Right? Good. So get out of the habit of thinking and feeling the way you have been accustomed to. Much of your feelings and thoughts are based on the misleading sexual information. Misinformation, which you have been exposed to from childhood. So you need to recognize that it is misinformation, it is misleading, and your habits of thinking and feeling a certain way based on these incorrect perspectives is just wrong. And so you want to be conscious of that, get out of the habitual way of being and living. Insight 125. Get out of habits and change the way you feel about things by consciously thinking and consciously feeling, as opposed to thinking and feeling out of habit. So this is about being conscious. You want to be conscious and aware, rather than just automatically feeling things, thinking things just out of habit. You don't want to be a dead robot. Insight 126. So, when you have thought of a person in a sexual manner for most of your life, it has become part of your habit, part of your second nature. What you have to do is to focus on the new information which you have received in this entire document and apply it to your everyday thoughts and everyday interactions with people. Yeah, so like I said before. Gradually, this is Insight 127, gradually, with persistence on your part, gradually, with persistence on your part, the new freeing information will take over the old habitual behavior. Slowly but surely, continually try to see things as truthfully as possible in order to establish your perception clearly in truth. Your motivation becomes seeing things clearly and truthfully as they are. Clearly see that it is the mind that has to be dealt with. The habitual thinking of the mind is what the battle is about. This was all these things, as you noticed, from Insight 123 onward, even before that, to 127. It's like it could have been read in one go, and that's the goal, really. Is the insights are meant to be read one after the other in that format, really. All right, good explanation here. This is a good explanation. At first, this information will be foreign to your understanding. In time, it will be somewhat familiar. Eventually, it will occupy a place in your thoughts, signifying its certain existence. After a while, it will almost be 50%, with its influence on your behavior compared to the old habits. Next, it will be 50%, so that at times you will be sexual, and at times you will be consciously deciding not to be sexual. Next, the information will start to overshadow the old habit. Yeah, so here, so at first, the information is like, you're not familiar with it. Then you start to become somewhat familiar with it. Okay, good. Then you come upon a point in life where the information you realize is certainly true. You know it to be very, very true. It's very vivid and real to you. And another point in life, you start to apply the information in your life, and your behavior, your sexual behavior, your control over your sexual thoughts, and also your sexual behavior of self-pleasure or getting involved in any sexual activity will start to leave its imprint on your behavior in a good way. So many times you will be sexual, but many times you will be conscious not to be sexual, and you won't be sexual. And this will continue on until eventually you're less than 50%. At times you're less than 50%, where you're conscious and not sexual, conscious and sexual, And then at some points you get to be at one point after that you'll be getting 50%. You'll be just right there. 50% of the time you'll be like, you will get involved in sexual activities, and another time you will not get involved in sexual activities. But in either case, you'll be conscious. Right. And next, the information will start to overshadow the old habit. Yeah. So that's when where it goes above 50%, where you're conscious and not involved in any kind of sexual activity. More than 50% of the time, you don't get involved, and you're conscious of it. And other times, you do get involved in sexual activities while you're conscious. Next, the sexual misinformation from habit will on seldom occasions show its influence. Wow. So you become more and more in charge. Next, you will contain it by 80%. Then by 90%, then by 95%, by 96%, and so on, until you have assumed total control. But you have to be actively applying the various techniques and genuinely want to recover a truer perception of people rather than what you have been given by society and by the manipulators' visual displays. Do not be discouraged. There will be many setbacks, and it might take many years, but you will see the step-by-step progress immediately, and you should be encouraged by your definite progress. Take any task. You play tennis, you play golf, you play whatever activity you play, to become a master at it, to learn it so proficiently. It takes many years. But, at first, almost any activity you pick up is going to be difficult, and you make many faults at it, many mistakes. It will feel unnatural. Take any activity, playing guitar, whatever it is. And then, even the activity of walking. It took you many years just to be able to walk. Well, first stand. So difficult to stand. I've heard some information that it takes 300 muscles coordinated together to be able to stand. 300. That's a lot of muscles to work with just to be able to stand, you see. So with this, just because it takes many years to master it doesn't mean that you should be discouraged. It's like immediately you start making significant headway. At first, of course, it feels unnatural, but then, just like any other activity, you gain proficiency, and your advancement in your skill will be exponential, meaning your progress will be doubled and magnified every time you practice and get good at it. All right. Insight 128. With each mistake into the old behavior. Oh, this is such a good insight. With each mistake into the old behavior, you should look to find out what triggered the old habits, what led from one thought to the next, and eventually leading you to the old habits. You will set up and establish conscious barriers of mindful awareness against those same areas which led you to your habitual sexual behavior. Okay, I'm going to read it again. With each mistake into the old behavior, meaning if you self-pleasure, or you go after sexual thoughts, or they somehow come upon you, or you get involved in sexual activity, right? With each mistake into the old behavior, you should look to find out what triggered the old habits. You see why it's so necessary to have guilt out of the picture, allowing you so that you are allowed to think clearly and discover. You should look to find out what triggered the old habits, what led from one thought to the next, and eventually leading you to the old habits. You need to discover these things. We will set up and establish conscious barriers of mindful awareness against those same areas which led you to your habitual sexual behavior. So you'll find the thoughts, the triggers and the thoughts, triggers, medium thought, and all the things. You will figure them out. You find them, and then you set up conscious barriers. Your consciousness will become a barrier, conscious barriers of mindfulness, being aware, awareness. It's a mindful awareness. It's a awareness, against those areas which led you to the habitual sexual behavior, So we're talking about anything and everything, areas I call them, anything and everything, thoughts, whatever it is, that led you, that triggered, started that thing, and allowed it to continue to get to the sexual thoughts. All this stuff we'll be going to immediately. Insight 129. Therefore, the next time you will be prepared, and you will not be easily overtaken by surprise intrusions on your senses. So when you set up the barriers of awareness, of mindful awareness, when you set up the barriers against specific situations, persons, actions, anything. Anything you name, anything in the universe and outside of it, whatever. Anything can be used as a trigger, so therefore, and as the medium thought, the pathway, the thought pathway. So you want to be, the next time you will be prepared. You want to figure out your specific triggers, and you're aware of them. And then, so next time when these intrusions come, you will not be surprised because you are prepared already beforehand.